I met a gypsy.
Well, everything was relatively easy until I hopped on a 500, really, and then it was a little bit of a
I don't think that was easy for anyone.
No, but I mean, it was really sort of a bit of a rejig on how does a bike work, because it was a completely different motorcycle and everything else I've ridden. But yeah, and the same thing, you know, I could see the progression. I could see that it was relatively easy. Everything, if anything, the bigger the bike and the you know, from the 250 to a 250 street bike, that is, to a 1000cc street bike to a super bike, they were all easier. For me, it just kept getting easier with these. The bikes got bigger or faster or whatever, and it was probably just because they were prepared better, or they were just, you know, 250 street bike is exactly that. It's a cheap little bike, and the 1000's a little bit built a little bit better, and so, and then the super bike, same sort of thing. It's now built to try and go on a racetrack. So, whereas a 500 was completely different, but equally, I knew that I was capable of riding the things probably a little bit better. But if I focused in on that and gave 100% commitment, then perhaps anything's possible. So, and that's really what I focused on. And as I said, put in that little bit extra effort to make sure that I'm winning, to stay on top of the game, was a hell of a lot easier than having to sort of finish second and going, I wish I would have.
Yeah, it makes so much sense. And then, so you go to to fast forward a little bit, like the 500's such a crazy era in motorcycling. And, you know, I was watching a bunch of stuff last night, and like you definitely, the style's so different now. But did you have a different style for like coming into the 500s? Like, was there something that you think you were doing differently than other guys, or
not really? Like, everyone's got a bit of a different style, and I think a lot of the styles back then were from dirt biking, you know, and especially on a left-hand side, a left-hand turn. Everyone sort of got a bit of a, for me, left-hand corners were sort of always a little bit easier than right. So
from
I think
dirt tracking?
Yeah. And, you know, and I'd sit down, you'd sit across the bike.
Yeah.
And you sort of control the bike underneath you, sort of when it's moving around. The right side was a bit more traditional road racer type on the right, because it was sort of a little bit foreign to me. But I think back then there wasn't the hang off like there is now. So we got. I used to sort of hang off my butt more than the others. The others would be sort of, my butt was down, so the body mass was down low, and then my upper body was up a bit higher. Kevin Schwantz was probably a bit similar, but then there was others which were a bit different. Today, everyone's hanging off and putting the elbow down. There was a guy, Jean-Philippe Rougier, you know, he was doing that in the 90s, and you know, everyone thought, what are you doing? And now everyone's doing it, you know. But yeah, the only time I'd scrape my elbow when I was scraping every other part of my body.
When your forehead was also on the ground.
But you know, sometimes you'd almost lose the bike, you lose the front or whatever, and you touch the elbow as you're trying to save it. And then that was about the only thing. But generally, it wasn't so much about the style, what sort of style you got or how you looked on the bike. It was what worked, what felt comfortable, and that's what I know. A lot of guys go, you know, how should I sit on the bike? Well, how do you feel comfortable? You know, everyone's got a different style. It's like, what's fast, what works for you? You know, because if you start to try and put yourself in a different position, I think it's difficult. At the end of the day, you want to get the bike in there, get it turned, get it up, and fire it out. You know, now today
it's more about the corner speed.
There's a lot more corner speed. There's a lot more side grip. The suspension's a lot better, but the tyres also can handle staying on its side. And when I say side grip, can stay on the side for a lot longer, whereas before you just sort of brake, turn it in, sort of max lean for a 15th, and then pick the thing up and fire it out. And then so for instance, sometimes in qualifying you'd set up for a lap and then you'd re-gear the bike for the race. So to fire it up, because you knew you couldn't maintain that lean for the race. So then you'd change the gearing because you need to have it up and then firing out. So you got to slow your mid-corner speed up, and then you know, over the length of the race, the first 10 laps you're all together, and then you slowly start to break it away. So it was all these type of things that were different than they are now, and you know, you've got all the traction controls and whatever else, which we certainly didn't have at that point in time, and there was really no indication of any of that, and we didn't need slipper clutches on a two-stroke because there was no engine braking.
Yeah.
So but even back in the day in the four-strokes, back in these TTF1s and superbikes and whatever else, slipper clutches started to come into them towards the end of the time I was running them, but still just using the clutch to freewheel going into turns.
Yeah.
So rather than, you know, the thing sliding around, we just pull the clutch in and then work it on the way out. So, you know, and a lot of these, it is what it is today. That's the way everyone has to ride them. But the good guys would still be able to compensate and use other things anyway. So I think all the traction control does was bring the mid pack guys closer to the front.
Yeah. If you enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe. And to listen to the full 3-hour podcast, search Gypsy Tales in your favorite podcast platform or click the link in the description below. Gypsy Gang.